Tennessee is known as the volunteer state. Locally, over 34% of Memphians volunteer their time to a wide range of organizations. Tonight on The Best Times, you'll discover the power of volunteerism. And we'll revisit the historic 1937 flood on the Mississippi River that inundated parts of 31 states. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you. Hello, I'm Chris Hardaway. Welcome to this edition of The Best Times, a series that looks at life after 50. During the War of 1812, Tennessee earned its nickname as the Volunteer State when thousands of its citizens answered the call to arms and fought in the Battle of New Orleans. In 2018, about 30% of Americans, that's over 77 million people, volunteered their time. That translates to $167 billion in economic value to charities, churches, schools, and other institutions. Volunteering can give you that warm, fuzzy feeling you get when you help someone, but there are tangible benefits as well. Volunteering can teach you new skills, help you stay active, and fill your retirement hours. It can even help you make new friends. The need for volunteers is great, so why not get off your couch and discover the power of volunteerism? If you visit the Old Country Store exhibit inside the Pink Palace, you might meet Sarah Doyle. Sarah worked in the printing business and has been retired for 12 years. She volunteers a few days a week at the Pink Palace. At the Old Country Store, she stays busy answering questions and telling the children about the way life used to be in the early 20th century.
And we had a school group one day, and they were looking at the post office over here, and they were talking to me, and they said, "Where's the cell phones?" I said, "Well, they didn't have cell phones back then. What did they do?" And I had to laugh because they didn't know.
The Pink Palace system of museums uses over 200 volunteers on a regular basis, and that number can more than double during special events like the Arts and Crafts Fair. Janie Paraham knows how important volunteers are to the operation of the museum.
If we didn't have the great volunteers that we have, we would not be able to do a lot of the functions that we have at the museum. A lot of volunteers that I get feedback from say that they really enjoy meeting the visitors that we have that come through the different aspects, the different properties that we have. You get to learn a lot when you volunteer at the museum at one of the facilities.
Meeting new people and making new friends are two reasons that Sarah volunteers. But the feeling she gets from volunteering is the real reason she spends her time at the Pink Palace.
It makes me feel good. It makes me feel like, I wish I could answer all the questions. I wish I knew more, but it's fulfilling. It really is. It's a nice feeling. It's a good feeling. I recommend volunteering.
At the East Shelby Public Library, Barbara Salisbury is taking reading lessons. Barbara dropped out of school in the 4th grade and has spent over 50 years of her life as a functional illiterate, but somehow she's been able to hold jobs and raise a family.
Didn't know how to write a check. My sister and them had to teach me how to write a check because I didn't know how to do it. And right now it's kind of hard for me to spell 11. Can you believe it? Can you not believe that? It's hard for me to spell 11 or 12. Now them other numbers, I can kind of get them, but 11 and 12, I've struggled with them two numbers.
Barbara is being tutored by Louetta Berkins, an engineer at FedEx and a volunteer for Literacy Mid-South. They meet every week at the library to read books. Today, they're reading the biography of Harriet Tubman.
In one read, oh, I didn't even see that one.
That's okay.
Miss Devin.
No, but I just want you to read it in the
Okay.
context.
Okay. In one raid, she helped free others.
That's what I want. Look at that word again.
She helped.
In one raid, she helps free.
Okay. In one raid, she helped free others.
Look at that word. She helped. Look at that second letter. It's not t, it's a v. She helps free.
Oh, she helped free over. Sorry. She helped free over 700 slaves.
I've always had a heart to give, and I realize that I'm very fortunate to be able to be in a position that I am, being a first generation college grad, and I have a responsibility really to give back. And so as I tell Miss Barbara all the time, our interactions aren't just for her, they're for me too. So I get so much more from her than she probably gets from me.
Literacy Mid-South relies on volunteers to fulfill their mission of eradicating illiteracy. And the volunteer teachers quickly find out that teaching and learning is a two-way street.
That this is really a learning experience both for themselves as well as their learners. They end up learning a lot about themselves, and I think gaining an understanding of how privileged too we can be to live in the literate world. Once they spend time with their adult learners, they really gain a sense of the major impact that literacy can have just beyond the ability to read and write. I think really puts into perspective how fortunate they've been, and a lot of things that they can often take for granted. It can really be an awesome experience for them.
When you give, then things are given back to you. So it keeps me moving and keeps me young. So.
At MIFA, the Metropolitan Interfaith Association, an army of volunteers helps the organization feed the hungry in the Memphis area. The most visible volunteers are those who deliver the Meals on Wheels. But behind the scenes, you'll find volunteers like Sister Betty Fracchia. She retired not long ago from a career in social work and education. MIFA was always a part of her post-work plans.
I had this planned out before I retired because I know I have to stay busy. And I took 2 weeks off after I retired and came here. 3.5 years I've been here. Love it, love it.
Sister Betty puts her master's degree in social work to good use at MIFA by qualifying applicants for food vouchers. Meeting and talking with people who don't know where their next meal is coming from has an impact on her.
You just learn a lot about the community and about them, and it gives you a lot to be grateful for every day.
Sister Betty has some advice for those looking for volunteer opportunities.
You got to fit into something. I feel this is a perfect fit, like a glove in a hand, So I'm, look forward to it every week.
Steve Freno is loading his car with food for his regular weekly delivery. His employer, FedEx, has allowed him to make these deliveries for the last 7 years. Volunteering has become an integral part of his life and the life of those he delivers to.
It's just become part of my life that's almost as important as my job and almost as important as many of the other things I do, where I just couldn't not do it anymore. Once I did it for a couple of months and it fit into my schedule, it's kind of the highlight of my week, and I know my folks depend on me. A couple weeks ago I was having car problems and I missed 2 or 3 weeks, and I just think about my clients going, they're probably wondering where Steve is, And when I came back 2 weeks ago, they were like, where were you? We were so worried. So it's part of my life, it's part of my family now. So I can't not do it, Chris. I mean, it's just like part of what I do now.
MIFA has about 80 to 100 weekly volunteers delivering 1,350 meals every week. Almost 18% of the Mid-South population is food insecure. As those numbers grow, so will the need for volunteers.
Find a mission that unites with you and what you love to do, and just step out and do it. Make the phone call. And because there's a need, you know, not just at MIFA, but just in our community as a whole.
If all of us just did something, you know, if all of us just did a little bit, the world becomes a better place.
Volunteer Odyssey is a website that directs people to volunteer opportunities throughout the city. I spoke with its founder and CEO. Let's begin by talking about Volunteer Odyssey. What is Volunteer Odyssey? What does it do?
Volunteer Odyssey is a volunteer center here in Memphis, and so we focus on matching people with their ideal volunteer opportunities, something that really makes you light up and helps you make a difference in the community.
So you're a matchmaker, in other words?
We are a matchmaker, absolutely, for volunteers of all ages, all backgrounds, anybody who wants to help and give back.
Are Memphians generous in their volunteering?
That's a great question. Memphis always makes the list for one of the most financially giving cities, but traditionally we've actually had a very low volunteer rate, and we've been doing better on that. But one of the challenges is that we have a very low volunteer retention rate, and that's why it's so important to make sure that we're helping people find that perfect match.
So you got to find the right, it's sort of like finding the right job in life, I guess. You have to
Exactly.
find the right volunteer role.
That's
in life.
exactly right. And so using that job analogy is perfect, because think about what you like to do, what you're good at, what your skills and talents are, maybe something you've always wanted to learn, and we use that to match you with the right place to volunteer.
I want to talk more about that in just a minute, but I want to get right to the impact of volunteering. What is the local impact of volunteering?
That's a great question. It can be hard to put your finger on sometimes, but there is a national group called the Independent Sector that places an economic value on the value of volunteer time. And in Tennessee, that's about $22 right now, which is pretty incredible. And then in terms of the sort of community impact, we need help with everything from blight to education. I mean, there are all different ways you can give back and volunteer, and that impact is tremendous for the individuals, but for our city as a whole.
Is there, can you put a $22 an hour figure on it?
Right.
Nationally or even statewide or locally for that matter, is there a number that you can put on it, the value of volunteering?
Yeah, so each state has their own rate. This group values the value of volunteering by state. And so Tennessee is kind of right on average. And one of the things that really drives up the value of that volunteer time is people who are volunteering pro bono. And so especially as we're thinking about retirees, the skill set that you had in your job, maybe that's strategy, communications, finance, using those skills to help our local nonprofits is incredibly valuable.
Well, let's talk about retirees or people that are nearing retirement and
Right.
thinking, what are the benefits for those individuals to volunteer?
Yeah, the benefits are really across the spectrum. So there is ample research that talks about how it keeps you engaged socially, physically, but also gives you a purpose each day. So a way to make the best use of your time and to go and be useful in a way that is benefiting other people in our community, which is tremendously valuable.
Well, there was a study that I read that Carnegie Mellon University did, and they said that older adults who volunteer at least 200 hours a year, they actually decrease their risk of hypertension, high blood pressure, by 40%, which is an amazing number. So it's not just, you know, you're doing good for somebody else, you're
Right.
actually doing good for yourself.
Yeah.
Mentally, I presume mentally and physically, right?
Yes, people who volunteer tend to have much better outlook on life, and that translates into a lot of different things. But even the act of volunteering, getting up, going somewhere, being physically active is good for your health as well. And so there are tons of studies that talk about all the different mental, physical, emotional aspects and benefits of volunteering.
The other thing I've read specifically regarding retirees is it helps with social isolation, which can be a real problem as we age.
Right.
Talk about that.
Sure. So when you're out volunteering, I think we often think about how we can help the people that we are serving, which is great and tremendous. But we also get a benefit from being around other people who are serving and making those connections as well. And so I know it sounds like you're already familiar with Meals on Wheels. So when you go out and deliver Meals on Wheels, you can make friends and contacts with the other people who are delivering, but you also start to build relationships with the people that you're serving. And those social impacts are tremendous.
Now, we talked a lot about the impact on those who volunteer, but what about the organizations themselves?
Gosh, the organizations, you know, nonprofits nonprofits do such incredible work, but they're always under-resourced. So nonprofits always need funds, but nonprofits also always need people who care about their mission and want to come and help and make a difference. And so we will always need people to mentor and tutor our children, to serve meals, to go and make somebody's day. And so there are things that volunteers can do that money can't do on its own. And our nonprofits rely so heavily on volunteers to be able to reach these communities and achieve their missions.
Well, exactly. An organization like MIFA that we mentioned couldn't exist without volunteers.
Exactly.
Meals on Wheels program wouldn't exist
Right.
without volunteers.
Yes, they're critical to the infrastructure of the nonprofits in Memphis.
You mentioned earlier, talked a little bit about special skills that you might have. Do you have to have any special skills to volunteer? If you do, does that help you zero in on what to volunteer for?
Yeah, that's a great question. The only special skill you need is a willingness to help. And if you want to help and you want to make a difference, then we can absolutely find the perfect fit for you. But whatever skill set you do have, there is a nonprofit here who wants you to come and do that. So maybe you're great at cooking, at photography, at teaching, whatever that might be. There's a way for us to put that into action and to get you engaged.
You know, I watched on your website, I watched your TED Talk. And one thing that struck me in that you said that volunteers should be selfish.
Right.
Now that doesn't seem right.
I know.
What did you mean by that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I mean by that is that you should enjoy, at least on some level, where you're volunteering. And if you don't enjoy where you're volunteering, you will eventually stop going. And so we want you to find something that you love, because if you love it, you're ultimately a greater resource to that nonprofit, to the people that you're serving through that nonprofit, and our community as a whole. And so when we say it should be selfish, it's really about finding your best match so that you can do the most good in our community.
Do you get feedback from your volunteers? What do they say?
Yeah, we love to hear from our volunteers. We have a retiree who came to us right after he had retired. His wife, I think, actually sent him to us. And he was looking for something that was flexible, but where he could, put sort of a process in place. And so we found the perfect fit for him, working in a food pantry and helping them improve their system. And he said that it just gave him this purpose every morning. He was excited to go and to work at this food pantry and to feel like he was able to contribute his operation background to a place that was serving the hungry in our community. And his wife said that his mood went through the roof, which was great. So I think everybody was happy about that match.
All right, to close out, why should someone volunteer? What advice would you give?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if you are looking for a way to give back, if you're looking for a way to apply skills you already have, if you're looking to meet friends, if you're looking to build new skills, really anything. I mean, we need volunteers so desperately. There are kids in line who need a mentor. And there's all these different ways that you can get engaged. And so a lot of people just need an invitation. And so if you're one of those people, if you're waiting for an invitation or if it's been on the back burner, we really need you to come and make a difference.
Well, thank you for being on The Best Times and telling us about volunteering opportunities.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
If you'd like to volunteer your time, go to the website of Volunteer Odyssey or Volunteer Memphis. Both can help you find a volunteer match that's just right for you. For 200 years now, the Mississippi River has been a vital part of Memphis history. In fact, the Bluff City might not exist had it not been for the economic opportunities that the river afforded the land speculators that founded Memphis. Today, the Mississippi has largely been tamed, but that wasn't the case in January of 1937 when the rains came and didn't stop until parts of 31 states were underwater. Here, the Mississippi River crested at over 48 feet, a record that still stands today. Memphis became an island of refuge for tens of thousands left homeless by the flooding. Historian Patrick O'Daniel records the human drama in his book, Memphis and the Superflood of 1937.
Tremendous rainstorms hit the Ohio and Mississippi valleys January 1st of 1937 and caused tremendous flooding. in both valleys at the same time. Cities like Cincinnati and Louisville completely flooded and had to be evacuated.
Flooding stretched all along the Ohio and Mississippi valleys, from West Virginia to Louisiana. More than 21 inches of rain fell in January of 1937, and over 8 million acres of land were underwater, creating what one newspaper called a lake the size of Ireland. 1.5 million people were affected by this disaster, and Memphis became a refuge for thousands.
At one point in February of 37, 1 in 5 people in Memphis was a refugee. So we had between 50 and 60,000 refugees come through Memphis in about a month period. One family in particular I can think of that the water came up through the floorboards. The husband runs out, hooks up the mules to the wagon, gets his wife, gets his kids out in there, and by this point the water's up to the wheels. They get about a mile down the road and the hooves of the mules are no longer touching the ground. The wheels aren't touching the ground either. And the only thing that keeps them from sinking below the waves is the momentum of the mules swimming towards the levee. People got out with basically their clothes on their backs. A lot of them traveled to Memphis on foot. So they're cold, wet, and of course sick. So once they got to Memphis, they had to be quarantined. The first thing the city did was to close down the fairgrounds and use the fairgrounds amusement park as a refugee camp. National Guardsmen came in and other volunteers built additional barracks to house the refugees that were coming in. And there were over 1,000 of them coming in a day. Once the fairgrounds filled to capacity, the city shut down all the schools, and all the schools were used as hospitals.
8,000 refugees were hospitalized and cared for by the Red Cross and volunteers from the Memphis medical community. Even by today's standards, it's amazing how quickly and efficiently the city was able to act in this crisis, and how generously people opened up their hearts and their wallets.
When people would give money, the donations were listed in the newspaper, in the commercial appeal, the name and how much money they gave. And you saw people like Boss Crump or some big business owners give large amounts of money. But you go down the list all the way to the end and there are children giving change to help out. And it's remarkable how much money was raised, not just locally, but across the whole country for this. Keep in mind, this is 1937. This is the depths of the Depression. And people were still giving everything they possibly could. And it took almost no time at all for them to organize and get started.
In spite of the generosity of Memphians, life in the camps wasn't comfortable.
The buildings that were used to house the refugees weren't really made for housing refugees. I mean, the cattle barn was not a place for people. The automobile building wasn't really a place for people. But volunteers from the Red Cross and Memphians who came in to help out did the best they could. The city provided entertainment. There were different musical acts that came through. At one point, a circus came through to entertain the kids. Church groups came in, people sang songs, watched movies, things like that. But Memphians did what they could to make the refugees as comfortable as possible.
In the midst of this disaster, E.H. Crump took issue with the way Mayor Watkins Overton was handling the recovery. So the boss took charge.
Crump personally led flood control efforts on the Nonconnah Creek. So he'd stayed out there night and day, directing people, say, here, take the steam shovel over there, you guys move sandbags over there. He took it upon himself to do it. And yes, that did cause friction with the mayor, because the mayor was saying, we've already taken care of this, you really don't need to be doing this. So there were some problems there. It's like, well, who's really running the city? And by the end of the flood, it was plainly clear that it was Boss Crump.
2 years later, Crump was elected mayor for the 3rd time. He was sworn in, promptly resigned, and turned the reins over to his protege, Walter Chandler. On February 18th, the flooding ended, and the storm-weary refugees slowly began to return to what was left of their homes. The exact number of flood-related deaths remains unclear, but the flood left over $3 billion in damage in its wake, prompting the federal government to beef up flood control along the Ohio River and in Memphis. When the Mississippi River began to rise again in 2011 to near record levels, the flood control measures held the waters in check. But as Patrick O'Daniel notes, we have an uneasy truce with Old Man River.
We know that we've developed these areas that used to be runoff for the Mississippi River, all these swamplands and stuff like that that used to absorb all the floods. Well, the river doesn't know that. So we basically had this very loose truce with the river. And the river will come back and claim that land, and it often does.
Want more information about life after 50? Go online to watch more shows and find more resources. And send us your feedback and story ideas to besttimes@wkno.org. That's all for this edition of The Best Times. Please join us next week for more stories about life after 50. Until then, I'm Chris Hardaway. Thanks for watching. Good night. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you.